Hello guys, welcome to Saiyan What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Goku survived Planet Vegeta's fall? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Survivor's Path. The impact crater stretched nearly a kilometer wide, steam still rising from its edges as the planet's atmosphere reacted with the foreign metals of the spacecraft. Local wildlife, six-legged creatures with translucent exoskeletons, gathered cautiously at the perimeter, their antennae waving in agitated patterns. They scattered as a figure emerged from the smoking wreckage, silhouetted against the burnt orange sky of Dreas IV. Kakarot stepped over the twisted remnants of what had been the cargo bay door, the metal groaning beneath his boots. Blood trickled from a gash above his left eye, but he paid it no mind. The wound would close within the hour, one of many benefits his mysterious physiology had granted him throughout his 26 years of existence. He surveyed the crash site with practiced efficiency, mentally cataloging salvageable components while his senses remained alert to potential threats. "Job," he called, voice rough from smoke inhalation. "Status report." A muffled groan emanated from beneath a section of collapsed bulkhead. With one fluid motion, Kakarot gripped the metal and tossed it aside as though it weighed nothing. A lanky humanoid with pale blue skin and forearms lay sprawled beneath, his lower left appendage bent at an unnatural angle. "Still breathing," Job rasped, all three eyes blinking asynchronously. "Though I'd prefer not to be, considering how much everything hurts." Kakarot crouched beside his navigator, dark eyes assessing the damage. "Your leg's broken. Probably 3 ribs too. Nothing fatal. Your sympathy overwhelms me," Job coughed, grimacing as Kakarot helped him to a sitting position. "The cargo. Checking now." Kakarot strode toward the rear section of the ship where a reinforced containment unit remained remarkably intact despite the surrounding destruction. He pressed his palm against the biometric scanner, which flickered feebly before the locking mechanism disengaged with a series of metallic clicks. Inside lay a crystalline sphere approximately the size of a human skull, pulsing with swirling emerald energy. The Nexus Core, their contracted delivery, worth enough credits to purchase a small moon in the outer systems. Still intact, he called back to Job, securing the artifact in a specialized containment field attached to his belt. "Which is more than I can say for our ship. We were hit with ion cannons before entering the atmosphere." "Pirates," Job suggested, attempting to splint his leg with nearby debris. Kakarot's expression darkened as he scanned the horizon. "No, the attack pattern was too precise. Military-grade weapons." He tapped the communication device on his wrist, which emitted only static. "Communications are being jammed." "This was coordinated. Frieza's men," Job whispered, suddenly pale. "But we haven't crossed the Empire in years. We've paid every tariff, registered every cargo." "It's not about what we've done," Kakarot interrupted, helping Job to his feet. "It's about what we're carrying. The Nexus Core isn't just valuable, it's powerful. And anything with power eventually attracts Frieza's attention." The mercenary's eyes narrowed as he detected movement on the ridge overlooking the crash site, multiple heat signatures approaching rapidly. Without hesitation, he lifted Job onto his shoulder, ignoring the navigator's pained protests. "Time to disappear," Kakarot muttered, the muscles in his legs tensing before he launched himself forward with explosive force. The sudden acceleration would have killed an ordinary being. But Job had learned years ago that his captain was anything but ordinary. They vanished into the dense purple vegetation just as the first scout ships appeared on the horizon. The underground trading post of Caraxus thrived in the shadow of Frieza's empire, a sprawling network of tunnels and caverns where information and contraband flowed as freely as the synthetic liquor served in its numerous establishments. Constructed within an asteroid field at the boundaries of controlled space, it served as neutral territory for mercenaries, smugglers, and anyone else requiring discretion. Kakarot sat alone in the darkest corner of the shattered moon, a tavern infamous for its clientele of professional killers and information brokers. His back was to the wall, providing a clear view of both CES while keeping his face partially obscured. The hood of his midnight blue cloak was pulled forward, casting shadows over features that had always drawn too many questions. He nursed a glass of amber liquid. appearing relaxed to casual observers. Only someone with exceptional perception might notice how his eyes tracked every movement in the room, or how his posture allowed for immediate response to potential threats. "Your contact is late," Job observed, returning from the bar with his own drink. His injured leg had been properly treated with regenerative compounds, though he still walked with a slight limp. "Perhaps he received the same welcome committee that greeted us, Andreas." "He'll come," Kakarot replied with quiet certainty. "Doric values his reputation too much to renege on a contract. Especially with me." The unspoken implications hung in the air. Throughout the outer territories, Kakarot had earned a reputation that inspired equal parts respect and fear. He took impossible jobs, survived unsurvivable situations, and always delivered. Some whispered that he couldn't be killed. Others claimed he wasn't entirely mortal to begin with. Kakarot did nothing to dispel such rumors. Mythology had practical advantages in his profession. "And if he doesn't?" Job pressed, his middle eye blinking nervously. "Then we find another buyer. The core isn't becoming less valuable while we wait." Kakarot's attention shifted subtly toward the main entrance. "He's here." A hooded figure twice as broad as an average humanoid entered the tavern, flanked by guards whose specie Kakarot couldn't immediately identify. The newcomer surveyed the room before spotting Kakarot and approaching with deliberate steps. "You're 5 hours late," Kakarot stated flatly as the massive being took the seat across from him. Doric pulled back his hood, revealing a face covered in bony plates that shifted slightly with each expression. His eyes, all 6 of them, blinked in a rippling sequence. "Frieza's patrols have doubled in this sector," he rumbled, voice like stones grinding together. "Something has the Emperor agitated. Something valuable." His gaze settled meaningfully on Kakarot's belt where the containment field hummed quietly. "Our arrangement remains unchanged," Kakarot responded, unmoved. "The agreed price. No negotiations." Doric's facial plates clicked together in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Direct as always. Though I wonder if you understand exactly what you've acquired." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The core isn't merely valuable for its energy capacity. It's an artifact from before the Cold Dynasty, before even the ancient Saiyan conquests." Kakarot's expression remained impassive, though something flickered behind his dark eyes at the mention of Saiyans, a reaction so brief that even Doric missed it. "I don't care about its history," Kakarot stated. "I care about completing the transaction and leaving this asteroid before Zah's patrols decide to conduct a surprise inspection." Doric studied him for a moment before nodding. "Your pragmatism serves you well." He gestured to one of his guards, who placed a secure credit transfer module on the table. "Verify it." Job quickly ran a cryptographic scanner over the device, nodding to Kakarot when the verification completed. "Full amount, clean routing." Kakarot unclipped the containment field from his belt and slid it across the table. "Pleasure doing business." As Doric secured the core, he paused, all 6 eyes focusing on Kakarot with unusual intensity. "One piece of advice, mercenary. Whatever path brought you to my doorstep with this artifact, consider changing direction. The core isn't the only thing Frieza seeks with increasing desperation." His gaze lingered. "There are whispers about surviving Saiyans emerging from hiding. Whispers that have the Emperor dispatching his most elite hunters." Kakarot's face betrayed nothing, but his fingers tightened imperceptibly around his glass. "The Saiyans were wiped out over 2 decades ago. Meteor collision. Everyone knows the story." "Indeed," Doric replied, rising to his feet. "A convenient tale, almost as convenient as a mercenary with strength beyond any known species who never removes his suppression bands." He nodded toward the weighted cuffs barely visible beneath Kakarot's sleeves. "Safe travels, stranger. The universe grows more dangerous for those with secrets." After Doric departed, Job leaned forward anxiously. "Should we be concerned about what he implied?" "No," Kakarot answered, draining his glass. "Doric trades in information as much as goods. Creating paranoia increases his value." He stood, adjusting his cloak. "We'll refuel and be in the outer rim by morning cycle." As they navigated through the crowded tunnels toward the docking bays, Kakarot remained unusually quiet. Doric's words had struck closer to truth than the traitor could have realized. For as long as Kakarot could remember, he had been different, stronger, faster, more durable than any being he encountered. His earliest memories were fragmented. A laboratory, a gruff voice instructing him to hide his power, WORLDS that blurred together as he was shuttled from one guardian to another. General Norik, the last and longest of those guardians, had told him only that he was special, and that certain parties would pay handsomely to acquire him, dead or alive. When Norik had fallen to Imperial assassins 8 years ago, his final words had been a warning. They'll never stop hunting our kind, boy. Trust no one. Suppress your power. Survive. Kakarot had spent the intervening years doing exactly that, surviving, taking jobs that kept him mobile, avoiding entanglements. The suppression bands he wore constant. Were technological marvels that masked his energy signature and limited his full capabilities to levels that wouldn't attract unwanted attention. Only in moments of dire necessity did he release a fraction of what lay beneath the surface. We've got company, Job whispered suddenly, interrupting Kakarot's thoughts. 3 figures had fallen into step behind them, maintaining a consistent distance. Their movements were too coordinated for common thieves. Keep walking normally, Kakarot instructed. When we reach the junction ahead, be ready to run for docking bay 17. Job nodded imperceptibly, his 3 eyes fixed forward while his upper right hand subtly moved toward the blaster concealed beneath his jacket. They had nearly reached the intersection when the attack came, not from behind, but from ahead. A hooded figure stepped directly into their path, pulling back her covering to reveal striking features, angular cheekbones, obsidian eyes, and hair as black as space itself. Pulled into a severe braid that reached her waist. Kakarot, son of Bardock, she stated in a voice that carried authority despite its softness. Your evasion ends today. Kakarot's body tensed, ready for combat. But confusion flickered across his features. No one had ever addressed him by that name, a name he himself barely remembered from fever dreams and fragmented memories. You have me mistaken for someone else, he replied evenly, assessing escape routes while signaling Job to stand ready. No mistake, she countered, stepping closer. Your energy signature is masked, but blood recognizes blood. Her eyes narrowed, even suppressed. Your Saiyan heritage cannot be hidden from another of your kind. The word struck Kakarot like a physical blow. Saiyan, the mysterious race Doric had mentioned. The species that had allegedly been wiped out by a meteor collision, a destruction he had somehow survived, according to the fragments Norik had shared over the years. Who are you? He demanded, keeping his voice low as curious onlookers began to take notice of the confrontation. My name is Celira, daughter of House Velaris, keeper of the Crimson Scrolls. Her posture shifted subtle, into what Kakarot instinctively recognized as a fighting stance, though unlike any he'd encountered before. And you will come with me, last son of House Bardock, before Frieza's hunters track your unshielded presence to this miserable outpost. Without warning, she launched forward with astonishing speed, her fist connecting with his chest before he could fully react. The impact sent him skidding backward several meters, crashing into a merchant's stall in a shower of mechanical components and alien fruits. Onlookers scattered in panic as Kakarot emerged from the wreckage, eyes narrowed with calculation rather than anger. She was fast, faster than anyone he'd fought in recent memory. And she had struck with precisely enough force to demonstrate her capability without causing serious damage. Job, he called without taking his eyes off Celira. Get to the ship, prep for immediate departure. But, go, Kakarot ordered, before addressing his attacker. You've made your point, I'm listening. Celira raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his restraint. 3 Imperial hunter squads entered this asteroid field 30 minutes ago. They're conducting a systematic search using Saiyan energy detection technology. The disruption field around this outpost won't hide you for much longer. And I should trust you because I've spent 13 years tracking down surviving Saiyans while avoiding Frieza's extermination squads, she replied sharply. Because I know exactly what happened to planet Vegeta, and it wasn't a meteor collision. And because right now, I'm your only chance of leaving this rock alive. Kakarot's instincts, which had kept him alive through countless dangerous situations, told him she was telling the truth. At least part of it. Lead the way, he decided, falling into step beside her as she moved swiftly toward an auxiliary docking area. But understand this, at the first sign of betrayal, I'll show you exactly why I've survived this long. Cellula's mouth curved slightly. I'm counting on it, Kakarot. Our race hasn't endured near extinction by being trusting. The vessel Cellula led him to was unlike any Kakarot had encountered, sleek and predatory in design. With technology that appeared both advanced and somehow ancient. The hull was composed of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it difficult to focus on directly. Saiyan design, she explained, noting his interest as the entry ramp descended. Modified with stealth technology developed by the Arlians before Frieza decimated their civilization. Inside, the ship was surprisingly spacious, its interior illuminated by ambient lighting that shifted subtly in response to their presence. Control interfaces glowed with symbols Kakarot had never seen yet found strangely familiar. This technology shouldn't exist, he observed, running his fingers over a console. The historical archives claim Saiyans were primitive warriors, barely capable of aiding the spacecraft provided by their cold dynasty overlords. Cellula's expression hardened. History is written by the victors, or in our case, by the genocidal tyrant who feared our potential enough to obliterate our homeworld. She activated the ship's systems with practiced efficiency. Everything you think you know about Saiyans comes from Frieza's propaganda. Our civilization was advanced, complex, with traditions dating back thousands of years before we encountered the Cold Empire. As the ship disengaged from the docking clamps, Kakarot accessed an external viewer, watching as the outer in of Job's smaller vessel became visible several bays away. My navigator, he began. Will be safer away from you, Cellula interrupted. Imperial hunters focus on Saiyan energy signatures. Your friend will attract less attention alone. Quote, she piloted the craft away from the asteroid with remarkable skill, navigating the debris field at speeds that would have been suicidal for most pilots. Once clear, she engaged what appeared to be a cloaking system before turning to face Kakarot fully. Remove the suppression bands, she instructed. Kakarot crossed his arms. Not happening. They're damaging you, she insisted. Saiyan physiology requires energy flow for proper development. Those crude devices have been stunting your potential for years. I can see the toll they've taken in your muscle density and cellular regeneration rate. They've kept me alive, he countered, and made you a shadow of what you should be. Her voice carried a mixture of frustration and something that might have been pity. You have no idea what you are, do you? What you could become. Before Kakarot could respond, the ship's alert system activated, displaying a tactical readout of 3 Imperial vessels entering the sector. Hunters, Cellula muttered, returning to the controls. They must have detected our departure despite the cloaking technology. Kakarot moved beside her, assessing the tactical display with practiced ease. Their formation suggests they're using a triangulation sweep. Standard Imperial pursuit protocol. His hands moved to a secondary control panel, reconfiguring shield distributions without asking permission. Redirect power from forward shields to aft. We'll need the extra protection when we make our jump. Cellula glanced at him with surprise but followed his suggestion. You know Imperial tactics well for someone who claims to avoid them. I don't claim to avoid them. I succeed at avoiding them, he corrected, eyes still on the display. Usually. The ship shuddered as the first energy burst from the pursuit vessels scattered against their shields. Cellula executed a series of evasive maneuvers that pushed the inertial compensators to their limits. They're hurting you. Toward the gravity well of the gas giant, Kakarot observed. Classic containment strategy. I see it, Cellula responded, her hands dancing across the controls. But they're expecting conventional evasion tactics. A predatory smile crossed her features. Let's disappoint them. She yanked the controls sharply, diving directly toward the massive swirling atmosphere of the gas giant. Kakarot GRI, PPED a support beam as the ship's structural integrity alarms activated. The atmospheric pressure will crush us before they lose pursuit, he pointed out, though his tone carried more curiosity than concern. Not if we use the density to our advantage. She activated a secondary propulsion system that Kakarot hadn't noticed before. This ship is designed to channel energy through its hull structure. When we hit the upper atmosphere, initiate a full power burst through that control node. As they plunged toward the churning surface of the gas giant, Imperial weapons fire intensified around them. The ship's shields flickered dangerously, temperature alarms blaring as friction heated the outer hull beyond safety parameters. Now, Cellura shouted as they breached the upper atmospheric boundary. Kakarot slammed his palm onto the indicated panel, which flared with golden energy upon contact. The ship shuddered violently, then surged forward with impossible acceleration as the swirling gases of the planet ignited behind them in a cascading chain reaction. The resulting explosion engulfed the pursuing Imperial vessels before they could alter course. Atmospheric combustion, Kakarot realized, impressed despite himself. You converted the methane concentration into propulsion while creating a diversionary explosion. Basic Saiyan battle tactics, Cellura replied, though her breathing had accelerated from the intense concentration required. Use the environment as a weapon when outnumbered. Once they were safely beyond the planetary system, she engaged what appeared to be faster-than-light drive. Though the technology looked nothing like the standard hyperdrive systems Kakarot was familiar with. "Where are we going?" he asked, finally allowing himself to relax marginally. "Somewhere safe," she answered cryptically. "Somewhere with answers." The journey lasted 3 standard days, during which Kakarot maintained a cautious distance from his mysterious rescuer. Cellura respected his space but made no secret of her assessment of him, her dark eyes studying his movements with analytical precision whenever they shared the common areas of the vessel. On the second day, she approached him as he completed a series of physical exercises, modified combat forms that he had developed over years of blending fighting styles from various worlds. "Your technique is unrefined," she observed, leaning against the bulkhead. "Powerful, but lacking proper foundation." Kakarot completed his sequence before responding. "It's kept me alive. Against inferior opponents, perhaps." Without warning, she moved into a formal stance he didn't recognize. "Show me your defensive capabilities." Before he could protest, she attacked with a combination of strikes so fluid they seemed to flow into one another. Kakarot blocked the first 3 movements but missed the subtle shift in her balance that preceded a sweeping kick. He found himself looking up at her from the floor, her foot positioned precisely above his throat. "Your instincts are impressive," she acknowledged, extending a hand to help him up. "But you're fighting from intuition alone, without understanding the principles behind the techniques." "Then enlighten me," he challenged, brushing himself off. What followed was unlike any training Kakarot had experienced. Cellura demonstrated forms that she claimed dated back thousands of years in Saiyan martial tradition, movements that emphasized energy efficiency, momentum redirection, and exploitation of an opponent's mass. "Combat isn't merely about strength," she explained as they moved through a synchronized sequence. "It's about understanding the flow of energy within yourself and your opponent." True Saiyan fighting arts were developed to face enemies of superior numbe. RS and varied physiologies across dozens of worlds. Despite his initial skepticism, Kakarot found himself absorbing the techniques with surprising ease, as though his body remembered movements his mind had never known. "How did you learn all this?" he asked during a brief rest period. "If planet Vegeta was destroyed over 20 years ago," Cellura's expression darkened. "I was off-world during He destruction. Part of an educational exchange with the Namekian elders, studying their energy manipulation techniques. My father believed in preserving knowledge above all else." She paused, a flicker of old pain crossing her features. "When news came of Vegeta's meteor collision, my Namekian mentors helped me escape before Frieza's cleanup squads arrived to eliminate surviving Saiyans across the galaxy." "Why would Frieza destroy an entire planet of warriors who served him?" Kakarot questioned, the historian's explanation never having satisfied his curiosity. "Fear," Cellura answered simply. "Fear of what we were becoming. Every generation of Saiyans grew stronger than the last, a biological imperative coded into our cellular structure. We adapt, evolve, and overcome at rates that terrify even the self-proclaimed emperor of the universe." Her eyes met his, particularly after the emergence of the Prophesied One. "Prophesied One, the Super Saiyan," she clarified. "A transformation of legendary power. Not seen for 3,000 years. Frieza's ancestors passed down warnings about the Golden Warrior who had nearly destroyed their dynasty generations before. When Saiyan power evils began approaching unprecedented heights, Frieza chose extermination over risking the prophecy's fulfillment." Kakarot absorbed this information with a thoughtful expression. "And you believe survivors like us could still achieve this transformation?" I know we can, she responded with absolute conviction. With proper training and the removal of those suppression bands, you particularly show the energy markers consistent with transformation potential. Before their conversation could continue, the ship's navigation system announced their approach to their destination, a small, unremarkable planetoid orbiting a dying star at the edge of charted space. Welcome to Sanctuary, Cellura announced as they began descent procedures. One of the last places in the galaxy where Saiyan knowledge is preserved, and where others of our kind occasionally find refuge. The landscape below them appeared barren and inhospitable, a rocky wasteland beneath perpetual twilight from the failing sun. As they descended through thin atmosphere, however, Kakarot noticed subtle irregularities in the terrain that suggested artificial construction disguised to appear natural from orbit. They landed on Wa. T looked like an empty plateau until segments of rock retracted to reveal a concealed docking bay. The ship settled into the hidden facility as massive doors closed above them, sealing them in darkness. Momentarily before interior lighting activated. Impressive security measures, Kakarot commented as they disembarked. Necessity, Cellura replied. This installation predates Vegeta's destruction, nay of several knowledge repositories established throughout the galaxy by my father's house. The external camouflage uses technology that masks energy signatures and distorts visual sensors. As they proceeded through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last, Kakarot noticed the architectural style shift from utilitarian to something more deliberate, angular designs recurring geometric patterns that triggered flashes of recognition in his subconscious. You remember, Cellura observed, noting his reaction. On some level, your body recognizes the cultural markers of your heritage. Before Kakarot could respond, they entered a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling that projected a perfect representation of an unfamiliar night sky. The constellations Auli rotated overhead while illuminated symbols flowed across the walls in continuous patterns. At the center stood a column of pulsing blue energy contained within a crystalline structure. The archive, Cellura explained, her voice taking on a reverent quality. A complete repository of Saiyan knowledge, history, and cultural achievements, everything Frieza tried to erase from the universe. Fig. Yor emerged from a side chamber, humanoid but clearly not Saiyan. Her skin had a faint lavender hue, with iridescent patterns that shifted with her movements. Silver-white hair floated around her head as though suspended in liquid, framing features of ethereal beauty. Her eyes, however, were her most striking feature, entirely white with no visible pupil or iris, yet clearly focused on the newcomers. You've returned, Keeper, she addressed Cellura before turning her unsettling gaze to Kakarot. And you've brought him, earlier than predicted, but welcome nonetheless. Kakarot, this is Xylia, Cellura introduced. Last daughter of the Etherian scholars and caretaker of the archive when I'm away. Your energy patterns are remarkable, Xylia stated, studying Kakarot with unblinking intensity. Quote, suppressed yet surging beneath the constraints. Like a star trying to emerge from behind an eclipse. She approached with fluid grace, stopping just outside his personal space. May I? When Kakarot hesitated, Cellura explained. Xylia is a telepath. Her species has the ability to read energy flows and the memories connected to them. She's been instrumental in recovering fragmented knowledge about Saiyan abilities. And what exactly would she be doing to me? Kakarot questioned, maintaining a cautious distance. Not invasion, Xylia assured him, her voice carrying harmonic undertones. Observation only. Your suppression bands have likely caused memory disruption along with energy constraint. I can help identify which memories are accessible without risking psychological damage. After a moment of consideration, Kakarot nodded once. Proceed, but stay on the surface. Xylia raised her hands to either side of his head without quite touching him. Her eyes grew brighter, emanating a soft glow that reflected in the dark pools of his irises. The sensation was strange, neither painful nor pleasant, but reminiscent of the moment between waking and dreaming when reality becomes fluid. Fascinating, she murmured. Your earliest memories are intact but segregated, a protective mechanism, perhaps. And your power. Her expression shifted to one of surprise. Your natural capacity exceeds any Saiyan reading in our records. That's impossible, Cellura interjected. The royal bloodlines had consistent, Predictable power signatures, Xylia completed. This is different. Less refined but vastly deeper. Almost as though she stepped back suddenly, breaking the connection. You need to remove those suppression bands immediately. They're not just limiting your power, they're creating dangerous energy buildup in your cellular structure. Kakarot's expression remained skeptical. I've warned them since childhood with no ill effects. Because you were still developing, Cellura argued. But you've reached physical maturity now. The natural energy production of an adult Saiyan is exponentially greater than a child's. Remove them here, Xylia suggested. This chamber is specifica, LLY designed to absorb and channel excess energy. It's the safest possible environment. After weighing their words against his instinctive caution, Kakarot slowly rolled up his sleeves to reveal the metallic bands encircling his wrists. They appeared seamless, with intricate circuitry visible beneath a transparent outer layer. General Norik said they were keyed to my biological signature, he explained. I don't actually know how to remove them. Cellura's eyes widened slightly. You were raised by General Norik, the commander of the Saiyan Elite Guard. Until his death, yes, Kakarot confirmed. Though he never explained his connection to me beyond being my assigned guardian. Norik was your father's closest ally, Cellura revealed. Bardock saved his life during the Tuffle conflicts, creating a life-debt bond. If he raised you, it was in fulfillment of that sacred obligation. This new information settled uncomfortably in Kakarot's consciousness. All his life, he had assumed his relationship with the stern general had been a matter of duty or perhaps profitable investment in his abilities. The concept of a personal connection, a bond of honor extending beyond his own existence, was unfamiliar territory. Xylia interrupted his thoughts by approaching the bands, her fingertips hovering just above the metal. These are Tuffle technology, modified with biological locks. I can deactivate them temporarily. But complete removal will require specialized equipment. Do it, Kakarot decided. Her fingers traced patterns above the bands, which responded with pulsing lights as complex sequences activated within the circuitry. After several tense moments, both bands emitted a soft tone before the lights faded completely. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Energy surged through Kakarot's body like a dam breaking. Raw power flooding every cell with incandescent force. His vision blurred as the room around him seemed to distort, the very air vibrating with the sudden release of suppressed potential. Memories cascaded through his consciousness, fragments coalescing into coherent images. A laboratory with strange equipment, a gruff-faced man with a distinctive scar placing him in an evacuation pod. Explosions illuminating the darkness of space, and planets that blurred together as he was shuttled from one hiding place to another. He dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by the dual onslaught of power and memory. The floor beneath him cracked as his energy continued to rise, causing the entire chamber to tremble. Focus. Cellura's voice cut through the chaos, her hands gripping his shoulders. Control your breathing. Visualize the energy flowing through established pathways, not erupting without direction. With monumental effort, Kakarot followed her instructions, gradually bringing the surging power under tenuous control. When he finally looked up, both women were staring at him with expressions of astonishment. What? He demanded, still struggling to maintain equilibrium. Your power level, Xylia whispered. It's still climbing. Cellura's expression had shifted from surprise to something approaching reverence. The archive's measuring systems are registered. Earring energy output consistent with the historical accounts of. She hesitated, as though afraid to voice her conclusion. Consistent with what? Kakarot pressed. The legendary transformation, she finished. You haven't achieved it yet. But your baseline power already approaches the theoretical threshold described in the ancient texts. Her eyes met his with newfound intensity. You could be he won from the prophecy, the Super Saiyan who will challenge Frieza's dominion. Before Kakarot could respond to this revelation, the facility's alarm systems activated, bathing the chamber in pulsing red light. Proximity alert, Xylia announced, moving swiftly to a control console. Multiple vessels entering the system. Configuration matches Imperial hunter ships. Impossible, Cellura insisted. This location is uncharted, with no energy signature to detect. Unless they tracked us from Caraxes, Kakarot suggested, rising to his feet as the implications became clear. My suppression bands, when they deactivated, the energy surge must have been detectable across the system. Xylia's expression confirmed his theory. The camouflage technology can't mask an energy spike of that magnitude. We have minutes before they pinpoint our exact location. Celera moved toward a secondary console, activating what appeared to be defensive systems. The installation has limited combat capabilities. But they won't hold against a coordinated Imperial assault. Then we don't fight defensively, Kakarot stated, a new confidence evident in his bearing. With the suppression bands deactivated, he stood taller. His presence somehow more substantial in the space he occupied. We take the battle to them before they can organize their approach. That's suicide, Celera objected. There are at least 5 hunter ships out there, each carrying specialized anti-Saiyan weaponry. Trust me, Kakarot responded, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. I've spent my entire life learning to survive against impossible odds. The difference now is that I'm no longer handicapped. He looked down at his hands, where energy crackled visibly between his fingers. And I'm very, very angry about that fact. Omething in his tone silenced further objections. Instead, Celera nodded sharply before turning to Xylia. Prepare the archive for emergency transfer protocols. If we fall, the knowledge must survive. To Kakarot, she added. Already the ship for combat configuration. Join me in the docking bay when you're prepared. As they departed to their respective tasks, Kakarot remained momentarily in the center of the chamber. Feeling the unrestricted flow of power through his body for the first time in his memory. It was intoxicating, illuminating, and terrifying all at once, as though he had spent his life viewing the universe through a fogged window suddenly wiped clear. If what Celera believed was true, if he truly had the potential to become the legendary Super Saiyan, then perhaps his survival had purpose beyond mere existence. Perhaps the fragmented path of his life had been leading to this moment, when the last son of House Bardock would begin to understand what it truly meant to be Saiyan. With this resolve hardening into certainty, Kakarot strode purposefully toward the docking bay, ready to confront the hunters who had pursued his kind to the edge of extinction, and perhaps, to talk. The first steps toward Frieza's eventual reckoning. Chapter 2. Rising Power. The hangar bay trembled as Frieza's hunter ships entered the atmosphere. Their sleek, bone-white hulls reflected the Dian G-Sun's crimson light, harbingers of destruction against the desolate landscape. Inside the hidden facility, Kakarot watched the tactical display with narrowed eyes while Celera completed the final launch preparations. 5 vessels, standard Helix-class hunters, he observed. They're deploying ground forces at coordinates equidistant from our position. Celera's fingers flew across the control panel. They don't know our exact location yet. They're hedging their bets. Then we use their uncertainty against them. Kakarot rolled his shoulders, energy crackling visibly across his skin as he adjusted to his unrestrained power. What offensive capabilities does this ship have? More than you might expect. She activated a secondary control system, causing panels throughout the vessel to reconfigure into weapon stations. This isn't merely a transport. It's a Saiyan battle cruiser, one of the last. The ship hummed to life around them, systems initializing with a deep, resonant pulse that Kakarot felt in his bones. Without the suppression bands, his senses had sharpened dramatically. He could perceive energy frequencies previously invisible to him, including the subtle harmonics of the vessel's power core. Their scanner technology has limits, he stated, formulating a strategy. If we launch simultaneously with a focused energy burst, we can create enough interference to mask our trajectory until we're within striking range of the command vessel. Celera raised an eyebrow, impressed by his tactical assessment. You've fought Imperial forces before. I've evaded them, he corrected. There's a difference between survival and confrontation. Not anymore. She secured herself in the pilot's seat. Today we stop running. As the launch sequence initiated, Xylia's voice came through the communication system. I've secured the critical archive data. The facility's self-destruct sequence is armed. Acknowledged, Celera responded. Rendezvous at the secondary location if we don't return within 48 hours. The hangar doors above them parted, revealing the darkening sky where Frieza's hunters circled like predatory birds. Kakarot felt an unfamiliar sensation rising within him. Not the cautious calculation that had guided his survival for decades, but something primal and eager. For the first time in his life, he wasn't preparing to run. He was preparing to fight back. Now, he commanded as the ship's engines reached full power. Cellera slammed her palm against the launch control while Kakarot channeled energy through his body into the ship's weapon systems. The vessel shot upward with explosive force, surrounded by a corona of blue-white energy that momentarily blinded the Imperial scanners. By the time the hunters registered their presence, Kakarot and Cellera were already among them. Commander Jinora stood on the bridge of the Dominion with perfect posture, hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. 20 years of distinguished service in Frieza's elite forces had earned her command of this hunter squadron, and with it, the burden of capturing or eliminating surviving Saiyans. Her own species, the Vorta, had served the Cold Dynasty for generations. Valued for their tactical intelligence and absolute loyalty. Unlike many of her colleagues, Jinora had never questioned her purpose or her orders. The Emperor's will was absolute, those who opposed it were, by definition, enemies of order. Until recently, energy signature confirmed, Commander, her second-in-command reported. Consistent with Saiyan biological patterns, but the power reading exceeds our classification parameters. Jinora's violet eyes narrowed. Impossible. No surviving Saiyan has ever registered above a Class 3. This one's different, the officer insisted. Rechecking his instruments. The signature is at least Class 1, possibly higher. Before she could demand clarification, proximity alarms blared across the bridge. A blinding flash erupted from the planet's surface, followed by the appearance of an unidentified vessel moving at impossible speeds directly toward them. Evasive maneuvers, Jinora ordered sharply. All ships, converging fire pattern Epsilon. Her crew responded with well-drilled efficiency, but the attacking vessel moved with uncanny precision, evading concentrated fire while returning devastating energy blasts that crippled 2 hunter ships in the opening exchange. That's not standard technology, Jinora murmured, recognizing the distinctive energy pattern. Tactical analysis of the enemy vessel. Configuration unknown, Commander, her tactical officer replied, but the energy signature matches recovered artifacts from. He hesitated, clearly reluctant to continue. Speak freely, Lieutenant. From planet Vegeta, Commander. It appears to be Saiyan in origin. The information settled like ice in Jinora's stomach. Her most recent briefing from Frieza's inner circle had emphasized that no Saiyan and technology had survived the planet's destruction. Yet here was evidence to the contrary, along with a power signature that exceeded established parameters. Which meant she had been lied to. Again, as the battle continued around her, Jinora made a decision that would irrevocably alter her path. Instead of issuing the order to deploy their prototype anti-Saiyan weapon, she opened a secure channel to the attacking vessel. Unidentified craft, this is Commander Jinora of the Imperial Forces. I request direct communication with the Saiyan aboard. Her bridge crew stared in shocked silence as she continued. Her voice steady despite the treason in her words. I have information critical to your survival. Information about Project Extermination and the truth behind Frieza's purge order. Kakarot. Chi's hand paused over the weapon's control, surprise momentarily overriding his battle focus. Did she just? It's a trap, Cellera stated flatly, executing another evasive maneuver as energy blasts streaked past their hull. Imperial commanders don't defect. Maybe. Kakarot studied the tactical display, noting that the lead vessel had ceased firing while maintaining a defensive posture. But she mentioned Project Extermination specifically. Cellera's expression darkened. How would she know that designation? It was a classified operation even within Frieza's inner circle. Exactly. Kakarot opened the communication channel. This is Kakarot. You have 30 seconds to prove your information is genuine before we resume our attack. The response came immediately, accompanied by a data transmission. Security File Gamma 936. Authorization. Jinora Primarch 7. These are the coordinates for 3 additional Saiyan purge operations scheduled for execution within the next solar week. Facilities housing half-breed children identified through genetic screening programs. The color drained from Cellera's face as she verified the transmission. These are authentic Imperial encryption patterns. And these coordinates. Quote. Her voice faltered. One matches a suspected refuge I've been monitoring. Kakarot made his decision. Commander Jinora, withdraw your remaining vessels to the outer atmosphere. You alone will dock with our ship to continue this discussion. Kakarot, this is insanity, Cellera hissed. She's Vorta. genetically engineered for absolute loyalty to the Cold Dynasty. Their neural structure makes betrayal biologically impossible. Nothing is impossible, he replied, disengaging the weapons systems. Only improbable until it happens. And right now, I'm more interested in those coordinates than in destroying Imperial ships. To his surprise, Celera didn't further object. Instead, she directed their vessel into position for docking, her expression unread AB. As the remaining hunter ships withdrew as requested. Minutes later, the airlock cycled open to reveal Commander Genora, tall and elegant in her Imperial uniform, her lavender skin contrasting sharply with the deep crimson of her close-cropped hair. Her posture remained parade ground perfect even as she faced Kakarot's suspicious gaze and Celera's barely contained hostility. I have exactly one chance to convince you. She began without preamble, so I'll be direct. Everything you believe about Frieza's empire is carefully constructed propaganda. The destruction of planet Vegeta wasn't an isolated incident, it was the first implementation of the Emperor's final solution protocol. She activated a holographic projector built into her uniform cuff, displaying classified Imperial documents. Quote, Frieza doesn't merely fear the Saiyan legend of the Super Saiyan. He fears genetic potential itself. Any species capable of evolution beyond his control is systematically monitored and, when deemed necessary, eliminated. Kakarot crossed his arms, his face betraying nothing. And you're telling us this why? Your species is renowned for its loyalty programming. Because I've seen the complete extinction list. Genora's violet eyes hardened. The Vorta are scheduled for purging within the next 5 years, once our utility as hunters diminishes with the completion of Project Extermination. My entire species, engineered for loyalty, used for generations, and slated for disposal like obsolete equipment. How did you access this information? Celera demanded. These classification levels exceed standard commander clearance. I was promoted to oversee the final phase of Saiyan elimination, Genora explained, which required access to the complete genetic registry, including test results Shaoi. Vorta evolutionary adaptation to our loyalty programming. 3 generations more, and we might develop resistance. Frieza won't wait for that possibility. Kakarot studied her with newfound interest. The commander's emotional control was impressive, but he could detect subtle stress indicators in her posture and respiration. Either she was telling the truth, or she was the most accomplished deceiver he'd encountered. These purge coordinates, he said, gesturing to the data still hovering between them. How soon can Imperial forces deploy? The operation begins in 72 standard hours. The primary target is a research facility on Calliope IV, where 13 half-Saiyan children are being held under scientific observation. The secondary targets are suspected hideouts in the Outer Rim, identified through energy signature analysis. Celera exchanged a significant glance with Kakarot. We can't reach all these locations in time, even at maximum speed. We don't have to. He turned back to Genora. You still command 3 functional hunter ships with hyperspace capability. If your defection is genuine, prove it by dispatching them to evacuate these locations immediately. Genora didn't hesitate. Agreed. But I should accompany you to Calliope IV. The facility has security measures specifically keyed to Imperial command codes. And conveniently place yourself with us if this is an elaborate trap. Celera observed dryly. Yes. Genora met her gaze directly. My life is collateral for my sincerity. Kill me instantly if my information proves false or if Imperial forces await at our destination. Those are acceptable terms. After a moment of tense silence, Kakarot nodded. Return to your vessel. Issue the evacuation orders to your remaining ships, then transfer to ours for the journey to Calliope. We depart in 30 minutes. As Genora returned to the airlock, Celera stepped closer to Kakarot, keeping her voice low. I hope you realize that if she's telling the truth, we're involving ourselves in something far larger than Saiyan survival. We're potentially initiating open rebellion against the most powerful being in the known universe. Kakarot's expression remained resolute. If half-Saiyan children are being held for experimentation, there is no alternative. And if what she says about other species is true. He looked down at his hands, where energy till occasionally sparked between his fingers. Perhaps our race was destroyed not because we were too violent or primitive, but because we represented something Frieza fears above all else, the potential for change. Calliope IV hung like a jewel in the blackness of space, its atmosphere swirling with iridescent clouds that concealed much of the surface from orbital scanners. According to imperial records, it housed a specialized medical research facility, dedicated to studying rare genetic conditions, a cover for what Jinora had revealed to be a laboratory where half-Saiyan children underwent experimental procedures designed to isolate and neutralize their Saiyan genetic traits. Their approach had been unsettlingly easy. Jinora's command codes granted them clearance through the automated defense systems, and the facility's skeleton crew appeared to have no warning of their arrival. If this was a trap, it was an extraordinarily subtle one. The children are housed in the subterranean levels, Jinora explained as they prepared for ground insertion. Security consists primarily of automated systems rather than personnel. Frieza prefers to limit knowledge of these operations. How many staff will we encounter? Kakarot asked, adjusting the battle armor Cellura had provided from the ship's stores, his first time wearing the distinctive Saiyan design that somehow felt natural against his skin. Minimal. A head researcher, perhaps 5 technicians, and a small security detail, no more than 10 soldiers. None above B-class combat rating. Cellura, who had remained suspicious of Jinner, despite the evidence supporting her claims, checked her energy pistol with practiced efficiency. And what happens after we extract these children? They'll need medical attention, psychological support, safe haven, none of which were equipped to provide while being hunted across the galaxy. One problem at a time, Kakarot responded. First, we confirm Jinora's information and secure the children. Strategy can follow success. The landing was executed under cover of a natural electromagnetic storm that periodically swept across the facility's region, a fortunate coincidence that Kakarot had learned never to take for granted. They touched down 3 kilometers from the main structure, concealing their vessel in a dense forest of crystalline vegetation that refracted light in disorienting patterns. As they approached the facility on foot, Kakarot felt an unfamiliar sensation prickling at the edges of his consciousness, a subtle awareness of energy signatures unlike his own yet somehow resonant with it. I can sense them, he realized aloud. The children. Their energy patterns have a similar frequency to mine, but fragmented, unstable. Jinora nodded grimly. The experimentation affects their natural energy regulation. Some of the procedures involve extracting and analyzing their capabilities while attempting to isolate the genetic markers responsible. The facility itself lied its sinister purpose with an unremarkable exterior, a low, utilitarian structure built into the side of a mountain, its design emphasizing functionality over intimidation. The true complexity, ACC, according to the schematics Jinora had provided, lay beneath the surface in a network of laboratories and containment areas. Their infiltration proceeded with surprising ease. Jinora's access codes bypassed the primary security systems, while Kakarot's enhanced senses allowed them to avoid the few patrol guards they encountered. It wasn't until they reached the main research level that they encountered any resistance. A blast door sealed the corridor leading to the containment area, its control panel requiring biometric authentication beyond Jinora's clearance. This is new, she murmured, examining the security protocols. The system's been upgraded since my last briefing. Stand aside, Kakarot instructed. He placed his palms against the reinforced metal, closed his eyes in concentration, and channeled energy directly into the structure. The door didn't merely open, it disintegrated, molecular bonds shearing apart under the precise application of power. Cellura stared at him with undisguised amazement. That technique, it's a master-level application of key control. How did you? Instinct, he replied simply, already moving through the opening. Beyond lay a circular chamber ringed with transparent containment cells. In each, a child or adolescent floated suspended in a bluish solution, connected to monitoring equipment by a web of sensors attached to their bodies. Their ages paired to range from perhaps 5 to 15 years, both male and female, each bearing subtle markers of Saiyan heritage, the characteristic black hair, defined musculature even in youth, and, in some cases, vestigial tails that had been surgically altered. 13, Cellura whispered, her voice tight with controlled rage as she counted the occupied cells. Just as Jinora said, Kakarot approached the nearest containment unit, where a young boy of perhaps 7 years floated unconscious. Despite the clinical environment, despite having no reference for normal childhood, Kakarot recognized the wrongness of what he was seeing. These children had been reduced to specimens, their potential weaponized against them. Something shifted within him, a fundamental realignment of purpose. Until this moment, his focus had been primarily on survival and discovering his own heritage. Now, staring at these children stripped of their freedom and dignity because of the same genetic makeup he carried, his perspective crystallized into something harder, more defined. "Get them out," he ordered, his voice carrying a new edge of authority. "All of them, now." As Jinora moved to the central control station to begin the extraction process, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security shutters began descending over the exits while red warning lights bathed the chamber in pulsing crimson. "We've been detected," Jinora reported, fingers flying over the controls. The system registered the door breach and activated containment protocols. "We have minutes before security forces lock down this level completely. Continue the extraction," Kakarot commanded. "Cellera, take position at the main entrance. I'll secure our exit route." As they moved to their assigned tasks, a new voice echoed through the facility's communication system, cultured, almost pleasant, but underlined with cold authority. "Unidentified intruders, this is Chief Researcher Mora. You've triggered emergency protocols for a highly classified Imperial installation. Surrender immediately, and your executions will be swift rather than instructive." Jinora's expression tightened as she continued working at the control panel. "Mora is Frieza's leading genetic specialist. If he's personally overseeing this facility, these children are more important than even I realized. Can you complete the extraction?" Kakarot pressed, feeling the approach of multiple energy signatures from the levels above. "Yes, but the revival process takes time. They can't be simply disconnected without risk of neural damage. Each awakening must be properly sequenced." Kakarot made a swift calculation. "Begin with the oldest. They'll recover faster and potentially help with the younger ones. Cellera and I will handle security." The Saint containment unit hissed open as the viscous preservation fluid drained away, leaving a teenage boy of perhaps 15 slumped against the transparent wall. As Jinora carefully removed the monitoring equipment attached to him, Kakarot turned his attention to the approaching threat. Security forces converged on their position from multiple access points, standard Imperial troops armed with energy rifles and shock batons. Their tactics were textbook, suggesting they had never encountered serious resistance at this facility. Against ordinary intruders, their numerical advantage would have been sufficient. Against a Saiyan no longer constrained by suppression bands, they were hopelessly outmatched. Kakarot moved with fluid precision, each strike calculated for maximum efficiency. He didn't merely defeat the security forces. He systematically neutralized them with an economy of movement that spoke of instinctive battle knowledge finally unleashed. Energy pulses that would have incapacitated ordinary opponents splashed harmlessly against his aura as he advanced through their formations, leaving unconscious bodies in his wake. Through their communication link, he heard Cellera's voice, GHT with concentration as she handled her own group of attackers. "Kakarot, they're deploying something new, some kind of energy dampening technology. My blasts are losing coherence before impact. Fall back to the main chamber," he instructed. "Protect Jinora and the children. I'll handle this." As he finished dispatching the last of his immediate opponents, Kakarot sensed a new presence approach. A single individual whose energy signature was fundamentally different from the security forces. More controlled, more refined, and carrying an undercurrent of something that raised his combat instincts to high alert. Chief Researcher Mora appeared at the end of the corridor, a slight figure in immaculate white attire. His species was unfamiliar to Kakarot, humanoid but with elongated limbs and pale, almost translucent skin through which complex circulatory patterns were faintly visible. His eyes, however, were his most distinctive feature, solid black orbs that reflected light like polished obsidian. "Fascinating," Mora observed, studying Kakarot with clinical interest. A pure-blood Saiyan specimen in his prime, demonstrating combat capabilities consistent with upper-tier projections. "You must understand my professional excitement at this unexpected opportunity." Kakarot squared his shoulders, blocking the path to the chamber where Jinora continued reviving the children. "Your research ends today. Those children are leaving with us." Such a predictable response, Mora sighed, removing his outer robe to reveal an exoskeletal framework integrated with his slender form. "All test. Subjects demonstrate the same tedious attachment to genetic similarity. It's a weakness I've exploited extensively in my work. Without warning, the researcher activated his augmentation system. Enter. GY crackled across the exoskeleton as he launched forward with surprising speed, striking with precision that belied his academic appearance. Kakarot blocked the initial assault but found himself driven back by the unexpected force behind each blow. The exoskeleton clearly amplified Mora's natural abilities, while also incorporating technology designed specifically to counter energy-based attacks. "Your confusion is understandable," Mora commented conversationally as they exchanged a flurry of strikes. "This prototype incorporates data collected from every Saiyan specimen we've studied over the past 20 years. It's designed to analyze and counter your species' particular combat adaptations." As if to demonstrate, the exoskeleton pulsed with energy that disrupted Kakarot's attempt to channel power into his next attack. The backwash of his own energy staggered him momentarily, enough for Mora to land a precise strike to his solar plexus that sent him crashing into the wall. "You see," the researcher continued, adjusting settings on his wrist interface. "Every engagement improves the system's predictive algorithms. Within minutes, your effectiveness will diminish to negligible levels." Kakarot pushed himself up, reassessing his opponent with newfound respect. This wasn't a simple security response, it was an opportunity the researcher had been anticipating. Each attack Kakarot launched was being analyzed and countered with increasing efficiency, the exoskeleton adapting to his techniques in real time. Conventional tactics wouldn't work against such a system. He needed to introduce variables the algorithm couldn't anticipate. Drawing on the training Cellura had begun during their journey, Kakarot shifted into an ancient Saiyan combat stance that felt simultaneously unfamiliar and instinctive. Rather than gathering energy for direct attacks, he began circulating it internally, building resonance patterns within his cellular structure. Mora's expression registered the first hint of confusion. "Interesting. That energy distribution doesn't match any documented Saiyan combat technique." "Your documentation is incomplete," Kakarot replied, feeling the power building within him like a gathering storm. "Your understanding of Saiyans comes from children and captured warriors forced into standardized testing scenarios. You've never faced a Saiyan who knows what he truly is." With that declaration, Kakarot released the contained energy, not outward in a conventional blast, but throughout his own body in a technique Cellura had called the Ascendant Surge. His speed and strength doubled instantly as the energy enhancement took effect, allowing him to move faster than the predictive system could analyze. His next series of strikes overwhelmed the exoskeleton's adaptive capabilities, causing system warnings to flash across its surface as Mora was driven back by the unexpected onslaught. The researcher's clinical detachment gave way to genuine alarm as his technological advantage rapidly deteriorated. "Impossible," Mora gasped as critical damage warnings appeared across his interface. "Your power curve exceeds all established parameters for your species." "A common misconception," Kakarot responded, channeling energy into his final strike, a palm thrust that connected with the exoskeleton's central power node with devastating precision. The system overloaded in a cascade of electrical discharges, leaving Mora slumped against the wall, his augmentation rendered useless. "You can't comprehend what we are through dissection and analysis," Kakarot continued, standing over the defeated researcher. "Saiyans aren't defined by genetic markers or power readings. We're defined by our capacity to evolve beyond limitations, including those imposed by beings like Frieza." Mora's obsidian eyes registered something approaching respect beneath his fear. "You truly don't understand what you're interfering with, do you? These children aren't merely test subjects, they're prototypes for Frieza's new generation of enhanced soldiers. Half-Saiyan genetics provide controlled power without the inconvenient independence of pure bloodlines." The revelation settled like ice in Kakarot's stomach. "You're breeding warriors. We're creating the perfect balance between power and obedience," Mora corrected. "The next evolution of Frieza's forces, capable of eliminating surviving pure bloods while remaining utterly loyal to the Empire." Before Kakarot could respond to this horrifying information, Cellura's voice came urgently through his communicator. "Kakarot, the extraction is complete, but we have a new problem. Imperial reinforcements are approaching. A destroyer-class vessel just entered the system." With one final glance at the defeated researcher, Kakarot turned and sprinted back to the main chamber. Inside, he found a scene of controlled chaos. All 13 children had been removed from their containment units, the older ones already conscious and helping with the younger children still emerging from sedation. Jinora moved efficiently between them, administering stimulants and removing monitoring equipment with practiced precision. Status, Kakarot demanded, scanning the group. All vital signs stable, Jinora reported without looking up from her work. But full consciousness will take time for the younger ones. They've been kept in suspended animation for extended periods. The oldest boy, the first awakened, approached Kakarot with cautious defiance in his stance. Despite his youth, his eyes held the wariness of someone who had experienced significant trauma. "Who are you? Why should we trust you?" Kakarot recognized the defensive posture, the way the boy had positioned himself between the potential threat and the younger children. It spoke of protective instincts that transcended the clinical environment in which they had been raised. "My name is Kakarot," he answered honestly. "I'm a Saiyan, like part of you. We're here to free you from this place." The boy's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "There are no Saiyans left. The scientists told us our genetic material comes from an extinct race." "They lied," Cellura interjected, joining the conversation. "We survived. Not many, but enough. And now we've found you." The facility shuddered around them as the first impacts from orbital bombardment struck the upper levels. The Imperial destroyer had begun its attack, likely attempting to eliminate evidence rather than risk the extraction subjects falling into unauthorized hands. "We need to move now," Kakarot decided. "The younger children will have to be carried." He turned to the oldest boy. "What's your name?" "L7, the boy replied. "That's my designation." Something in Kakarot's expression hardened. "Not anymore. From now on, you choose your own name. But first, we survive." He gestured to the conscious teenagers. "Each of you take responsibility for one of the younger ones. Stay together, move quickly, and do exactly as we say." As they organized the evacuation, Jinora approached with a data crystal in her hand. "I extracted this from the central database before initiating the containment release. It contains complete research files on these children and references to other facilities. If there are more like them elsewhere, we'll find them," Kakarot promised, accepting the crystal. "But first, we get these children to safety." Their escape from the facility became a desperate race against the escalating orbital bombardment. Sections of the structure began collapsing around them as they navigated toward the surface. Kakarot and Cellura using their energy abilities to clear blocked pathways while Jinora guided them through the increasingly unstable complex. When they finally emerged into the open air, the sky above was streaked with the fiery trails of bombardment projectiles raining down upon the facility. Their ship, still concealed within the crystalline forest, lay 2 kilometers away across exposed terrain. "We'll never make it before they detect our movement," Cellura assessed grimly, watching as Imperial shuttles began deploying ground forces around the perimeter. Kakarot surveyed the situation, calculating options with newfound strategic clarity. "We need a diversion." He turned to Jinora. "Take Cellura and the children toward the ship. Move in small groups using the crystal formations for cover." "And what will you be doing?" Cellura demanded, already suspecting his intention. "Creating a more interesting target." His expression brooked no argument. "Go. I'll join you when I can." As they reluctantly departed with the children, Kakarot turned toward the main Imperial landing zone, where troops were organizing for a systematic search pattern. Drawing a deep breath, he released the careful control he'd maintained over his power since the suppression bands were deactivated. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Energy erupted around him in a brilliant aura that lit the twilight landscape like a second sun, creating a beacon that no Imperial scanner could possibly miss. As expected, the ground forces immediately reoriented toward his position, while the destroyer above adjusted its bombardment pattern to concentrate on this new threat. Kakarot smiled grimly. Now came the part where survival instincts would need to balance with tactical necessity, drawing pursuit, while avoiding actual capture or destruction. A dangerous game, but one he had played in various forms throughout his life. With a burst of speed that left a crater in the ground behind him, he launched himself directly toward the Imperial forces, becoming a blazing comet of energy that scattered their formation before veering away in a direction opposite from the escaping children. Pursuit craft immediately gave chase. energy weapons blazing as they attempted to bracket his flight path. For several crucial minutes, Kakarot led the Imperial forces on an elaborate chase across the terrain, using his superior maneuverability and knowledge of energy conservation to stay just ahead of their most concentrated fire. Each time they adjusted their tactics, he introduced new variables, diving into narrow ravines, using crystal formations to refract his energy signature into multiple false readings, occasionally turning to disable pursuit craft with precisely targeted energy blasts. Through his communicator, he heard Cellura's voice. "We've reached the ship. Engines primed for immediate departure. What's your position?" Entertaining our hosts, he replied tersely, dodging another barrage of energy fire. "Are the children secured?" Quote, "All aboard and strapped in. Genora's plotting an escape vector through the electromagnetic storm to mask our initial trajectory." "Good. I'm inbound. Be ready to launch the moment I arrive." Changing direction abruptly, Kakarot abandoned the evasive pattern he'd established and streaked directly toward their concealed vessel, pushing his speed to levels th. At left, pursuing craft hopelessly behind. The destroyer above adjusted its firing solution, massive energy cannons tracking his movement with ominous precision. The first blast struck just as he reached the crystalline forest, vaporizing acres of vegetation in an expanding wave of destruction that nearly engulfed him. Using the resulting debris cloud as cover, Kakarot altered his course slightly before resuming his headlong flight toward the waiting ship. He arrived at the landing site moments before the next bombardment struck, diving through the closing entry hatch as Cellura engaged launch thrusters. The ship rocketed upward, inertial compensators straining against the extreme acceleration as they punched through layers of atmosphere toward the freedom of open space. Imperial vessels moving to intercept. Genora reported from the tactical station. Destroyer launching fighter squadrons to box us in. Kakarot, still catching his breath from the extended exertion, moved to the weapons control panel. The electromagnetic storm. How far? 20 degrees starboard, approximately 40 seconds at current velocity, Cellura answered, executing a series of evasive maneuvers as the first fighter craft came within weapons range. "Take us in at maximum thrust," he instructed. "Divert auxiliary power to aft shields." The ship plunged into the swirling maelstrom of charged particles and magnetic distortions that constituted Calliope IV's perpetual electromagnetic storm. Instrumentation flickered erratically as conflicting energy patterns interfered with ship systems. Behind them, the pursuing Imperial craft hesitated at the storm's boundary, their more standardized systems more vulnerable to the disruptive effects. "They're holding position at the perimeter," Genora confirmed, touring the tactical display through the interference. "Standard Imperial protocol restricts pursuit into Class 3 electromagnetic anomalies. Then we use the storm to mask our jump trajectory," Kakarot decided. "Plot a course that keeps us within the distortion field until we're beyond their sensor range, then execute a randomized hyperspace entry." As Cellura and Genora implemented his instructions, Kakarot made his way to the main cabin where the rescued children huddled in various states of consciousness and comprehension. The older ones maintained protective positions around the younger, their expressions a mixture of wariness, confusion, and cautious hope. The boy who had identified himself as L7 stood as Kakarot entered. "Are we safe?" he asked simply. Kakarot considered the question with appropriate gravity. "For now, the storm will cover our escape from this system. After that," he met the boy's gaze directly, "I won't lie to you. Frieza's forces will hunt for us. But you're no longer alone in that reality. Where are you taking us?" one of the other teenagers asked, a girl of perhaps 14 whose features showed more pronounced Saiyan characteristics than some of the others. "Somewhere safe," Kakarot answered, realizing as he spoke that their options were severely limited. The sanctuary had been compromised, and they now traveled with 13 children who would require substantial care and protection. The ship shuddered as it broke free of the electromagnetic storm, immediately executing the pre-programmed hyperspace jump that would take them beyond immediate Imperial pursuit. As the familiar distortion of faster-than-light travel enveloped them, Kakarot felt the weight of responsibility settling upon him with new gravity. He had begun this journey seeking answers about his own identity. Now he found himself responsible for these children, the future of a heritage he himself was only beginning to understand. The sanctuary moon of Elysium hung in the shadow of a gas giant. perpetually bathed in the reflected light that painted its lush landscape in shades of gold and amber. Hidden within a dense asteroid field that deterred casual exploration, it had served as a refuge for displaced species for centuries before the Cold Dynasty's expansion, and now, as a haven for those Genora's intelligence had managed to extract from Frieza's purge list. Weeks had passed since their escape from Calliope IV. In that time, Kakarot had experienced a profound shift in his understanding of purpose. The solitary mercenary focused on survival had been laced by something he had never anticipated becoming: a leader, a protector, and increasingly, a symbol of resistance against Frieza's rule. He stood now on a ridge overlooking the small settlement they had established, watching as the rescued children trained under Cellura's guidance in a meadow below. Already their improvement was remarkable, freed from the suppression drugs and monitoring systems of the research facility. Their natural abilities had begun asserting themselves with impressive speed. "They recover quickly," observed a soft voice beside him. "The resilience of youth, perhaps. Or the resilience of Saiyan blood." Kakarot turned to find Xylia approaching, her ethereal form seeming to shimmer in the golden light. She had arrived at Elysium a week after their own escape, bringing with her the salvaged core of the archive and news of other survivors who had heeded Genora's warning in time to escape the Imperial Purge operations. "Not just Saiyan blood," he responded, nodding to Ward Ware L7, who had chosen the name Kirin for himself, was helping a younger child perfect an energy manipulation technique. They look after each other. Even in that facility, they maintained connections, formed a family of sorts. Xylia's expression softened as she followed his gaze. "Much like what is happening here, among all of us." She gestured toward the broader settlement, where refugees of various species had begun working together to build something sustainable. Necessity creates unusual alliances. It was true. In the weeks since establishing this refuge, their numbers had grown beyond the initial rescue group. Genora's former subordinates had delivered other survivors from Imperial target lists, not just those with Saiyan heritage, but members of various species-identified foe. Processing, under Project Extermination. What had begun as a sanctuary for 13 children had evolved rapidly into the nucleus of something much larger. "I've completed my analysis of the research data Genora recovered," Xylia continued, her tone shifting to something more solemn. "The implications are significant." "Tell me," Kakarot requested, turning his full attention to her. The genetic research wasn't merely about creating soldiers with Saiyan attributes. It appears Frieza is seeking something specific within Saiyan DNA, a genetic marker associated with transformation capability. "The Super Saiyan legend," Kakarot surmised. "Yes, but with a twist I hadn't anticipated." Xylia's expression grew troubled. "Frieza isn't merely trying to prevent Saiyans from achieving the transformation. He's attempting to extract and synthesize the genetic potential for his own use." The implications settled heavily in Kakarot's consciousness. He wants to become what he fears. Precisely. Control through acquisition rather than elimination. The ultimate expression of his philosophy. Xylia hesitated before continuing. "There's something else. According to the data, your genetic struct contains the highest concentration of these markers ever recorded. If you were to achieve transformation, I would represent everything Frieza has spent decades trying to prevent," Kakarot concluded. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Genora, her normally composed features tight with concern. "We have a situation. Long-range scanners have detected an Imperial patrol fleet entering the outer system. Standard search pattern suggests they're conducting a systematic sweep. Could they have tracked us here?" Kakarot asked, immediately alert. "Unlikely. Our approach vectors were specifically designed to avoid detection, and the asteroid field disrupts conventional scanning technology." Genora's expression remained grim. "However, this may represent a new search protocol implemented after our escape with the children. If they maintain their current pattern, they'll pass within detection range of Elysium within 72 hours. Kakarot absorbed this information the calculated calm that had become his hallmark. "Evacuation options. Limited," Genora admitted. "We have 3 vessels with interstellar capability, but they can't accommodate everyone. And even if they could, dispersing now would leave each group vulnerable to individual capture." "Then we don't run," Kakarot decided. "We hide more effectively, and if necessary, we fight. The strategy meeting that followed brought together the emerging leadership council of their unusual community, Kakarot and Cellura representing Saiyan interests, Jinora providing imperial tactical knowledge, Xylia contributing her scientific and historical expertise, and, somewhat surprisingly, Kirin speaking for the rescued children who had quickly become integral to camp operations. The asteroid field provides natural concealment, but not against dedicated scanning equipment, Jinora explained, displaying a holographic representation of their situation. Imperial patrol vessels are equipped with multi-spect RUM analyzers specifically designed to detect energy signatures associated with populated settlements. Then we mask our energy signatures, Cellura suggested. The suppression technique I've been teaching the children could be implemented on a broader scale. Not everyone can master energy control that precisely, Kakarot pointed out. And some species here naturally emit detectable patterns regardless of conscious control. Xylia, who had been studying the holographic display with unusual intensity, suddenly straightened. The gas giant's radiation belt. If we could extend its influence to encompass Elysium's orbit temporarily, it would create interference patterns that would mask life signs from conventional scanning. Altering a planetary radiation belt would require immense energy manipulation. Jinora observed skeptically. Not altering, extending, Xylia clarified. Using resonance principles similar to those in Saiyan energy projection techniques, but on a macro scale. All eyes turned to Kakarot, whose power now represented their most significant energy resource. He considered the proposal thoughtfully, mentally calculating the energy requirements against his current capabilities. It's possible, he concluded, but it would require channeling more power than I've ever attempted to control. Without proper focusing methodology, the results could be unpredictable. I might be able to help with that. Came a new voice from the entrance to their meeting space. The woman who entered moved with the fluid grace of a natural healer, her pale golden skin marked with intrigue. Cape patterns that identified her species as Lumerian, a race renowned for their mastery of bioenergetic principles. She had arrived among a group of refugees 2 days earlier, maintaining a quiet RVE that had given Kakarot little opportunity to assess her capabilities. My name is Alara, she introduced herself formally. On my world, before Frieza's forces destroyed it, I was keeper of the harmonic protocols, techniques for channeling and focusing energy through specialized conduits. Her clear gaze met Kakarot's directly. I believe I can help you extend the radiation field without risking destabilization. Something in her confident competence immediately earned Kakarot's respect. Unlike many who encountered him since his power had been unleashed, she showed neither fear nor awe, only professional assessment. Explain, he requested simply. Alara approached the holographic display, manipulating the controls with practiced ease to highlight the energy dynamics between the gas giant and its moons. The radiation belt already extends partially toward Elysium during the planet's magnetic pole reversal cycles. By establishing resonance nodes at these key points, she indicated specific coordinates. A skilled energy manipulator could temporarily stimulate the expansion of the field along its natural tendency lines, creating a shield that appears entirely natural to Imperial scanners. Jinora concluded with new interest. It could work. The resonance nodes would require physical devices placed at the specified coordinates, Alara continued. I can construct them using materials from my ship, but proper placement would need to be precise within meters, and they're all located in the space between the moon and the gas giant. A spacewalk, Kakarot surmised. Through an asteroid field and near-lethal radiation levels. Yes, Alara confirmed without embellishment. And once placed, the nodes would need to be activated simultaneously by an energy pulse calibrated the exact resonant frequency of the radiation belt, which you know how to calculate, Cellura observed, her tone suggesting skepticism. It was my life's work before the destruction of my world, Alara replied simply. Lumerian harmonic protocols were developed specifically to manage radiation fields around our binary star system. Kakarot studied her for a moment longer before making his decision. Begin constructing these nodes immediately. Jinora, calculate the optimal window for deployment based on the patrol fleet's current trajectory. Xylia, work with Alara to determine the exact resonance frequency required. As the meeting dispersed to implement his instructions, Cellura remained behind, her expression troubled. "You're placing a great deal of trust in someone who arrived 2 days ago." "I'm placing trust in demonstrable expertise," Kakarot corrected. Alara's knowledge of energy harmonics is evident in how she analyzed the problem. "Besides," he added with the ghost of a smile, "if she wanted to betray us to Imperial forces, providing them our coordinates would be far simpler than inventing an elaborate scheme involving radiation physics." Cellura acknowledged the point with a slight nod, though her natural caution remained evident. "The plan will place you at significant risk. Channeling that much energy while maintaining precise control is exactly why I need to continue the training you've begun." Kakarot finished for her. "The ancient techniques you've been teaching me focus on exactly this kind of energy manipulation." Their eyes met in a moment of shared understanding. Since his powers had been unleashed, Kakarot had trained relentlessly under Cellura's guidance, absorbing traditional Saiyan combat arts with remarkable speed. Their sessions had evolved from basic instruction to something more collaborative as his natural aptitude began expressing itself in innovations that sometimes surprised even his instructor. "Tonight, then," Cellura agreed. "The clearing beyond the northern ridge. We'll focus specifically on energy projection and distant manipulation." The space between Elysium and its parent gas giant stretched vast and treacherous before them, a void filled with drifting asteroids, radiation streams visible as shimmering curtains of light, and the occasional flash of energy discharges as competing magnetic fields interacted. The small transport craft Kakarot and Alara occupied navigated this hazardous environment with delicate precision, its enhanced shielding straining against the radiation levels that increased as they approached the first deployment coordinates. "Shield integrity at 70%, Alara reported, monitoring the craft's systems while simultaneously making final adjustments to the resonance nodes secured in the cargo compartment. "We should reach the first deployment point in approximately 3 minutes. Kakarot nodded, his attention divided between piloting and maintaining the protective energy field he had established around their vessel as a secondary defense. The training session with Cellura the previous night had focused specifically on this technique, extending his aura to encompass objects beyond his physical body while maintaining consistent energy flow. "The first node needs to be anchored to that asteroid formation," Alara indicated, highlighting a cluster of smaller rocks orbiting a central mass. "Its composition contains enough ferrous material to amplify the resonance signal once activated." Maneuvering the craft into position required navigating through unpredictable asteroid trajectories and radiation eddies that threatened to overwhelm their shields. Kakarot's reflexes and spatial awareness proved invaluable, allowing him to predict and avoid collisions that would have destroyed their vessel. Once in position, Alara prepared for the first deployment. "I'll need to extend the articulation arm through the field to place the node. The radiation exposure will be significant, but the arm's insulation should prevent system damage for approximately 30 seconds. "No," Kakarot decided, assessing the situation. "The placement needs to be too precise for mechanical manipulation." He secured the ship's position before rising from the pilot's seat. "I'll do it manually." Alara's eyes widened. "That's impossible. The radiation levels outside would kill most species within minutes, even with protective gear." "I'm not most species," he reminded her, moving to the airlock and retrieving the first resonance node. "My cellular structure can withstand the exposure long enough to place the node. Maintain our position and be ready to retrieve me immediately after deployment." Before she could protest further, Kakarot entered the airlock, activated his personal energy field to maximum intensity, and cycled the outer door. The vacuum of space embraced him as he pushed away from the ship, propelling himself with carefully controlled energy bursts toward the target asteroid. The experience was unlike anything he had previously attempted. Even with his protective field, he could feel the radiation washing against his skin like caustic liquid, seeking entry through any fluctuation in his energy barrier. The weightlessness required constant adjustments to his trajectory and orientation, while the resonance node in his grasp needed to be protected from both impact damage and radiation exposure. Reaching the target location, Kakarot carefully positioned the device according to Alara's specifications, activating its magnetic anchoring system to secure it to the asteroid's surface. The node hummed to life, its central crystal beginning to pulse with stored energy as it established its initial calibration sequence. The return journey to the ship proved more Yenjing as the radiation exposure began affecting his concentration, causing fluctuations in his protective field that allowed increasing amounts of harmful energy to penetrate. By the time Alara retrieved him through the airlock, his skin had taken on an alarming reddish hue, and his breathing had become labored. Your cellular structure is showing signs of radiation damage, she observed with professional concern, immediately applying a regenerative compound to his exposed skin, yet significantly less than I would have expected given the exposure duration. Saiyan adaptability, Kakarot explained between controlled breaths, already feeling his body beginning the accelerated healing process that had served him throughout his life. We evolve in response to damage. What doesn't kill us literally makes us stronger. Alara's expression registered scientific interest beneath her concern. A remarkable evolutionary advantage. On my world, we studied similar principles but could never achieve biological implementation. The deployment of the remaining nodes followed a similar pattern, though Kakarot modified his technique with each exposure, learning to better maintain his protective field against the specific radiation frequencies they encountered. By the final node, his efficiency had improved to the point where the physical aftereffects were minimal. All 7 nodes are in position and reporting optimal functionality, Alara confirmed as they returned to their ship after the final placement. Preliminary harmonics show alignment within acceptable parameters. Once activated simultaneously, they should extend the radiation field precisely as calculated. Kakarot studied her as she worked, noting the focused intensity with which she monitored the calibration sequences. Like many healers he had encountered throughout his travels, Alara's approach combined scientific precision with intuitive understanding, a balance that reminded him somewhat of his own combat methodology. Your expertise is impressive, he acknowledged as they began their return journey to Elysium. Especially for someone whose world was destroyed. A shadow passed across her features. Knowledge survives when those who value it ensure its preservation. When Frieza's forces targeted my planet for resource extraction, a handful of us escaped with the most critical aspects of our cultural and scientific heritage. Her hands tightened momentarily on the controls. I am the last of those escapees. The others were hunted down one by one over the years. The parallel to the Saiyan experience was too obvious to require comment. Instead, Kakarot asked, why were Lemurians targeted? Your reputation was for healing arts, not warfare. Our understanding of energy harmonics had applications beyond healing, she explained. Particularly our research into amplification techniques that could, theoretically, enhance the natural abilities of other species. A bitter smile touched her lips. Frieza destroys what he cannot control and controls what he cannot destroy. We represented a third category, knowledge that could potentially empower his enemies. As they approached Elysium, Kakarot considered how consistently this pattern appeared in every encounter with survivors of Frieza's expansion. The tyrant's paranoia about potential threats had led to the systematic elimination of entire civilizations whose only crime had been possessing knowledge or abilities that might someday challenge his absolute authority. The activation sequence will need to be initiated within 12 hours, Alara continued. Returning to more immediate concerns. The Imperial Patrol will be within scanner range by then, and the nodes require specific astronomical alignment to achieve maximum efficiency. I'll be ready, Kakarot assured her. The energy projection will need to be precisely calibrated to avoid destabilizing the nodes while still providing sufficient power to initiate the resonance cascade. Alara glanced at him with quiet assessment. You understand the principles remarkably well for someone without formal training in harmonic theory. I adapt quickly, he replied simply. The truth was more complex. Since his suppression bands had been deactivated, Kakarot had discovered an intuitive grasp of energy dynamics that went beyond conscious learning. It was as though his body remembered principles his mind had never been taught, a cellular knowledge embedded in his Saiyan heritage that emerged when needed. Upon returning to the settlement, they found preparations for potential conflict well advanced. Genora had organized defensive positions using the natural terrain advantages, while Cellura had continued training the more capable refugees in basic energy manipulation techniques. That might prove useful if combat became unavoidable. The patrol fleet has increased speed, Genora reported during their briefing session. Current trajectory will bring them within scanner range AP, approximately 2 hours earlier than previously calculated. Then we accelerate our timetable, Kakarot decided. Alara, how quickly can the nodes be brought to activation readiness? The preliminary calibration sequence requires 9 hours minimum, she responded after quick calculation. Attempting to rush the process would risk harmonic instability, which leaves us with exactly zero margin for error, Cellura observed grimly. Kakarot absorbed this information with characteristic focus, mentally adjusting their strategy to accommodate the compressed timeline. We proceed as planned. Genora, maintain alert status and prepare evacuation protocols for our most vulnerable refugees as a contingency. Xylia, work with Alara to optimize the calibration sequence, even gaining minutes could prove critical. As the group dispersed to implement his instructions, Kakarot found himself approached by Kirin, the teenage half-Saiyan who had emerged as a natural leader among the rescued children. I want to help with the energy projection, the boy stated without preamble. I've been practicing the techniques Cellura taught us, and my control has improved significantly. Kakarot studied the young half-Saiyan thoughtfully. In the weeks since their escape from the research facility, Kirin had demonstrated remarkable growth, not just in power, but in his capacity to inspire and organize the other children. Where imperial conditioning had attempted to create isolation and dependency, freedom had instead fostered leadership and cooperation. The energy requirements exceed what you can safely channel at your current development stage, Kakarot explained honestly, but there is another role equally important. He outlined his plan, and Kirin listened with growing determination. By the time they finished their discussion, the boy's initial disappointment had transformed into focused purpose. The following hours passed in intensive preparation as the settlement organized around the activation sequence. Alara established a control center from which she could monitor the nodes, harmonization, while Xylia adapted components from the archive to enhance their communication capability with the deployed devices. Genora's tactical expertise ensured their defensive preparations remained inconspicuous from orbital observation, concealing their awareness of the approaching Imperial threat. Cocker, OT spent this time in focused meditation, preparing his mind and body for the precise energy control the operation would require. Cellura joined him briefly, offering final guidance on the ancient Sei and techniques that would help him maintain stability during the projected power expenditure. Your control has improved dramatically, she observed as they completed a synchronized kata designed to align internal energy pathways. But this level of projection will push you beyond any previous limits. Be mindful of the threshold indicators we discussed. If you begin experiencing neural feedback cascades, you must reduce output immediately regardless of external circumstances. Understood, Kakarot acknowledged, recognizing the genuine concern beneath her professional demeanor. Their relationship had evolved significantly since their first encounter, from suspicious adversaries to reluctant allies and now to something approaching genuine partnership. Her expertise in traditional Saiyan arts complemented his raw power and adaptive instincts, creating a synergy that had accelerated his development beyond what either could have achieved individually. As the final preparation hours ticked away, Alara reported from the control center. Nodes have achieved 97% harmonic alignment, optimal conditions for activation. Imperial Patrol has entered the outer detection grid, approximately 90 minutes until their scanners can penetrate the asteroid field. The activation point had been carefully selected, a natural rock formation at Elysium's magnetic pole that would serve as a focusing lens for Kakarot's energy projection and a buffer against any backwash effects from the resonance cascade. Kirin and several other half-Saiyan teenagers had taken position at calculated intervals around this point, prepared to establish a containment field that would prevent energy dispersion during the critical moments of the projection. Kakarot took position at the center of the formation, feeling the accumulated power building within him like a gathering storm. The training with Cellura had taught him to channel this energy with precision rather than brute force, directing it to hero-specific internal pathways that amplified and refined its quality. Beginning final countdown, Alara's voice came through the communication link. Nodes shifting to active reception mode. Enter. GY projection window opens in 30 seconds. Around him, Kirin and the others established their containment field, a shimmering dome of interlocked energy patterns that would focus his projection toward the targets while preventing dangerous dispersion. The technique represented weeks of dedicated practice, their natural abilities enhanced by both freedom from suppression and proper instruction. Nodes ready. Cosmic alignment optimal. Begin projection on my mark, Alara instructed, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her tone. 3, 2, 1, mark. Kakarot drew upon his power in a way he had never attempted before, not as an explosive force for combat, but as a precise instrument of creation. The energy flowed from his core outward along carefully visualized pathways, gathering momentum and coherence as it moved through his transformed awareness of his own capabilities. When the projection finally emerged from his extended hands, it manifested not as a destructive blast but as a concentrated beam of pure energy that shot upward through the containment field, splitting at precisely calculated angles to connect simultaneously with all 7 nodes orbiting in the space between Elysium and its parent planet. The sensation was extraordinary. He could feel each node receiving and processing his energy, transforming it through the crystalline matrices Alara had ignited into harmonic frequencies that began to excite the naturally occurring radiation belt. Through this connection, Kakarot experienced the vast energetic dance of planetary bodies in a way no human could measure, a visceral understanding of cosmic forces interacting according to patterns both mathematical and mysteriously organic. Energy acceptance at optimal levels, Alara reported, her voice tight with concentration. Harmonic resonance building, radiation field beginning to fluctuate as predicted. The effort required to maintain the precise energy flow quickly became apparent. Kakarot felt the strain building in his system as he channeled more power than ever before while simultaneously maintaining the delicate control necessary for the harmonization process. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his muscles trembled with the effort of sustaining the projection without fluctuation. Radiation field expansion at 20% of target, Alara continued. Acceleration curve nominal. Maintain current output. Around him, the containment team struggled similarly with their task, the younger half-Saiyans pushing their developing abilities to their limits. Hiran's face showed intense concentration as he coordinated their efforts, adjusting the field's configuration to accommodate minor fluctuations in Kakarot's output. Minutes stretched into an eternity of focused will as the process continued. Through the communication link, Jinora provided updates on the Imperial Patrol's approach, each report increasing the urgency of their task while simultaneously requiring the same measured precision that made such urgency difficult to accommodate. Patrol fleet has entered final approach vector, Jinora announced. Scanner range in approximately 15 minutes. Radiation field expansion at 65%. Alara responded. Current progression rate requires at least 20 minutes to achieve full coverage. The mathematics of their situation became starkly clear. Why would not complete the radiation field expansion before the Imperial scanners detected their presence? Unless something changed, their entire plan would fail at the critical moment. Kakarot made his decision. Drawing upon reserves he had not yet explored, he increased his energy output beyond the calculated parameters, pushing into territory that Celera had specifically warned against. The projection beam intensified visibly, its diameter expanding as more power flowed through the established pathways. Energy input exceeding recommended levels, Alara warned. Node stability potentially compromised. Can they handle the increased flow? Kakarot asked through gritted teeth, fighting to maintain control of the surging power. A moment of tense silence followed before her response. Yes, your biological system wasn't designed for this output level. The potential for catastrophic feedback. Understood. Continue monitoring. He cut off further discussion, focusing entirely on maintaining the delicate balance between maximum power and precise control. The sensation that followed defied easy description. As Kakarot pushed beyond his previous limitations, he experienced his consciousness expanding along with his energy, connecting more deeply with the nodes, with the planetary bodies they influenced, and with the fundamental forces being manipulated. It was as though he could say, the energy patterns of the entire system as clearly as the ground beneath his feet. Radiation field expansion accelerating dramatically, Alara reported, surprise evident in her voice. 80%. 90. Harmonization patterns exceeding theoretical models. Through this expanded awareness, Kakarot perceived something unexpected, a resonance pattern within his own energy that somehow matched the unique signature of the radiation belt. Without conscious decision, He adjusted his output to amplify this resonance, creating a cascading effect that propagated through the entire system. Field expansion complete, Alara announced with barely contained amazement. Full coverage achieved. Imperial scanners will register only natural radiation patterns. The moment of triumph was short-lived. As Kakarot began the carefully calculated power-down sequence, he felt something shift within his energy pathways, a disruption in the controlled flow that sent warning signals through his overstretched system. The harmonization had worked, but the strain on his body had exceeded even his remarkable capabilities. Feedback cascades, exactly what Cellura had warned against, began rippling through his nervous system. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, like lightning trapped beneath his skin with nowhere to discharge. His vision blurred, the projection beam fluctuating dangerously as his control began to slip. "Something's wrong," Kirin shouted, sensing the change in Kakarot's energy pattern. "The containment field is destabilizing." Through waves of escalating pain, Kakarot fought to maintain enough control to complete the power-down sequence. If the projection terminated too abruptly, the resulting energy backwash could potentially harm everyone within the containment field, including the young half-Saiyans who had trusted his leadership. Suddenly, he felt new energy flowing into the system, not from him, but into him. Alara had abandoned her monitoring station and now stood directly behind him. Her hands pressed against his back as golden energy transferred from her body into his. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced. Not raw power like his own, but a harmonizing influence that began stabilizing the chaotic feedback patterns cascading through his system. "Healing harmonics," she explained through clenched teeth, clearly straining with the effort. CTing the feedback through complementary pathways. Continue the power-down sequence while I maintain stabilization. With her support, Kakarot managed to gradually reduce the energy projection in a controlled manner, allowing the nodes to deactivate safely while preventing the destructive backwash that had threatened. As the beam finally dissipated completely, he collapsed to his knees, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. Alara knelt beside him, her hands still emanating the golden energy that continued counteracting the worst of the neurological damage. That, she observed with remarkable composure given the circumstances, was either the most brilliant or most reckless energy manipulation I've ever witnessed. Despite the lingering pain and exhaustion, Kakarot found himself appreciating her calm professionalism. "I'm going to interpret that as admiration," he responded, his voice rough but steady. "It was both," she confirmed, a hint of a smile touching her features as she continued the healing process. "You intuited harmonic patterns that shouldn't have been detectable without specialized equipment. The resonance cascade you triggered wouldn't have been possible using standard projection techniques." Before he could respond, Janora's voice came urgently through the communication system. "Radiation field is fully established. Imperial Patrol has entered scanner range but is continuing on their projected course without deviation. They haven't detected us." The collective relief was palpable as the containment team dissolved their energy field, the young half-Saiyans dropping to sitting positions in various states of exhaustion. Kirin approached Kakarot with an expression of mingled concern and admiration. "That was beyond anything we've trained for," the boy observed. "I couldn't even track all the energy patterns you were manipulating toward the end." "Neither could I, entirely," Kakarot admitted, accepting Alara's assistance to stand. "It was educational." The understated description drew unexpected laughter from those within earshot, a release of tension that quickly spread throughout the gathered group. Even Kakarot found himself smiling despite the lingering discomfort of his overexerted system. As they made their way back toward the settlement, Alara maintained contact, her healing energy continuing to address the damage caused by the extreme energy channeling. "You'll need several days of recovery before attempting any significant power usage," she informed him. "The neural pathways need time to stabilize after that level of strain." "We may not have that luxury," Kakarot responded, his thoughts already turning to the broader implications of the day's events. "The Imperial Patrol's presence in this sector suggests increased activity throughout the region. We need to accelerate our preparations for more permanent security measures." Alara studied him with professional assessment. "You push beyond limits as a matter of course, don't you?" "Not recklessly, but as though limitations themselves are merely suggestions rather than absolute boundaries." "Isn't that true for everyone?" He countered. Boundaries exist until we transcend them through necessity or determination. A very Saiyan perspective, she observed, though her tone held no criticism. On my world, we believed in working within natural harmonics rather than forcing advancement. Finding the resonant frequency that allows change without disruption. And yet here you are, Kakarot noted, using your harmonizing abilities to counteract the consequences of my boundary pushing. Her smile returned, more pronounced this time. Perhaps that's the most effective approach, the push for advancement balanced by harmonizing guidance. Neither philosophy complete without the other. The insight struck Kakarot as profoundly relevant not just to his personal development, but to the emerging community they were building on Elysium, diverse approaches and philosophies combi. Ning to create something stronger than any could achieve in isolation. From the rescued half-Saiyan children to the military precision of Genora's security protocols, from Xylia's preservation of cult Ural knowledge to Alara's harmonizing influence, each contributed essential elements to their collective survival. As they reached the settlement, where anxious faces waited for confirmation of their success, Kakarot realized that his path had irreversibly changed. The solitary mercenary focused on personal survival had been replaced by something he had never anticipated becoming, a nexus point Uru. ND which resistance to Frieza's tyranny could organize and grow. The implications were as terrifying as they were exhilarating. For the first time in his life, Kakarot had found a purpose worthy of power awakening within him, not merely to survive, but to ensure others could do the same. To protect not just his own existence, but the potential of all those Frieza would eliminate in his paranoid quest for absolute control. And perhaps, ultimately, to become what the tyrant feared most, not merely a Super Saiyan of legend, but a symbol around which the oppressed could rally. Looking at the faces around him, Saiyan, half-Saiyan, and the diverse species who had joined their growing community, Kakarot made a silent vow. Whatever power continued awakening within him would serve not just his own advancement, but the protection and liberation of all who suffered under Frieza's rule. It was a vow that would soon be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. ____. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.